You're listening to the S.1 podcast, where we help disciples of Jesus discover their calling, develop their skills, and get deployed to their mission.
Man, really excited to get a season 1 started of the S.1's podcast. And the main focus we're going to have for this entire season is just discovering how do we discover our calling. So there's going to be a lot of different topics we hit, and we're excited about some of the guest speakers we're bringing in. But to start, Josh, I just know you have some great thoughts that I've seen a little bit of and can't wait to hear a little bit more fully of just that idea of everybody wants to know, right? What is God's will for their life? Even as you're at kind of any stage, actually, but especially as you're hitting those key points of finishing high school, finishing college, what is God really calling me to do? So I wondered if you could just kind of jump in and share some thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think we all ask that question, right? Like, God, what is your will for my life? And all growing up, that was the big question in my heart. From a young age, I really longed to do whatever God had called me to do. And so all throughout my life, I remember different stages of really praying that prayer. God, what is your will for my life, and what do you want me to do? And I had a mentor in my life several years ago that really challenged me on that question. And he basically put it like this. He said, "Joshua, what if you're asking the wrong question?" I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I think that's a pretty good question. What's your will for my life? And he said, "I'm not saying it's a bad question. I'm just saying that maybe you should ask a different one first." And I'm like, "All right, lay it on me. What is it?" Um, and he said, "Rather than asking Josh, God, what is your will for my life? What if you just asked God, what is your will, period?"
Mm.
Um, and light bulbs begin to click off in my head, man, because that question changes everything. Because then you're basically asking God, what do you long for? Like, if you were at work in the city, what would you do? Where would you go? What's your will for this nation? What's your will for my friends? What's your will for my family? Um, what's your will for the people all around me? Like, what is your will? What do you dream about, God? Right? And that's a whole different question. And here's what my mentor said. He said, "Josh, if you can hear God's heart, right? Because that's what this is. It's a question about what God's heart is. It's about knowing his heart and his passions and his desires first before we hear his will for our, I honestly, man, I feel like so often we want that snowflake purpose. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
God, give me that special calling and anointing. And first, he really wants us to tap into his heart and his desires and what he longs for. And this is what the mentor said. He said, "Josh, if you can figure that first question out, God, what is your will, period? What do you long for? What's your desire?" Then the answer to that first question you were asking will immediately be answered, because God's will for my life is for me to give every gift, every talent, every ability that I have to fulfill his will for the nations. That's what his will for my life is. And so then it's about God's big purpose. It's about his big dream. It's about his big vision. And then I give all that I have, all time, energy, money, and resources to see God's vision accomplished. And what that does, man, is that puts God in first place. It puts God's heart first. It puts his desires first. And then I surrender to that, and every gift and ability he's given me, every spiritual gift he's given me, it all is laid down at his feet so that his vision and will can be accomplished. And man, when I started to pray that prayer, and really began to try to hear what God's heart is and what his vision is, dude, it began to change everything, and it began to change the focus of my own life. And I really began to find my own life's purpose within that big purpose that God has for the nations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good. And now I have to tongue in cheek say I'm one of the first millennials. So hearing that I don't have a snowflake purpose was hard to hear. I don't know. I don't remember when you were born, but maybe you can go whatever direction you want with this. But just like, how does that work? Because God, of course, we believe God creates everybody uniquely and does call people for a purpose. Like, if you want to dive deeper into how those play together.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm not saying that he never gives us a special purpose. The problem is is that a lot of times we're waiting for some special assignment from the Lord without ever obeying what we've already heard him say.
Mm,
Um, and it's like we want to be a Navy SEAL, but we don't want to go through boot camp. And it's like we're not going to be special forces until we really learn how to pick up and clean our weapon. You know what I mean? It's there. There's a step by step process, and
mhm,
I kind of say this tongue in cheek too, man. Like I feel like, especially in the West, um, we know so much of the Bible already. So much of us that call ourselves Christians. I say this all the time, man. I tell people like, hey, listen, I firmly believe that we could never pick up the Bible again. Now, don't do that. I'm not saying to quit reading your Bible, but what I am saying is you could never pick it up again. And if you just obey what you already know, you would shake the cities in which you live, man. You change the
mm,
nations. Like
mhm,
it's not that we don't have enough knowledge. It's not that Jesus has never spoken about these things. He's been super clear about what he's calling us to do, what his big picture is, what his big vision is. I mean, he's called us to make disciples of the nations. I mean, he's called us to reach every man, woman, and child. He's called us to see no place left among the nations without the gospel. He's called us to see the Habakkuk vision accomplished, like the waters cover the sea, so God's glory would cover the earth. He's called us to have that Revelation 7 vision accomplished, where there's a multitude that no one can count, man, from every tribe, tongue, and nation around the throne at the end of the age, singing praises to our Father. Like that is his overarching big vision. Now, are there times he gives us special assignments to see some of
mhm,
that fulfilled? Absolutely. But if we're not giving our lives for the sake of that mission being accomplished, can we really expect that he would give us some like super
mhm,
special forces style assignment where it's that like, man, this is exactly what I need you to do right now? And so I feel like even though he may do that on occasion out of his grace and mercy, I think what the Lord is really asking of us is, man, do something that
mhm,
you already know that I've called you to. He's called all of us, man, to be ambassadors. He's called all of us to be sent ones. He's called all
mhm,
of us to be a disciple who goes and makes more disciples. Like that's a call over all of us. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And so if we give our lives for that will, God's will, period, then his will for our lives become a lot more clear as we're going. Like as many people say, bro, it's really hard to turn a parked car. And I feel like we're sitting on the couch asking for a snowflake purpose when in all reality, he's like, man, just get up and do what you already know I've called you to do. And I will guide you and steer you
mhm,
once you begin, right? Once you get going.
mhm.
And so anyway, that's that's a lot, but that's kind of the heart and vision behind this, really.
That's super good. And we're going to really dive into just kind of nuances of all that you talked about there that with several guests as we're lining up interviews and excited to do that. As you think about just kind of that opening picture of to really be a sent one, we need to discover our calling. And that discovering doesn't necessarily start with that super special, oh, what is the special thing God's got for me? Is there anything else that you would throw in or add just to kind of help us to get launched into that next or the next
Yeah,
things we're going to learn?
our next episode, we're actually going to sit down with a good friend of mine, Will Mancini, and we're going to talk about that difference between what he would call common calling versus special calling, or not versus really, just common calling and special calling.
Hmm.
And honestly, the Lord makes it very clear that He lays a very strong biblical foundation for the common calling of all of us. And honestly, I heard somebody say once, I can't remember who it was, but he said in the West we are overeducated and under obedient, right? And so often we read the scriptures and we know what the common calling is. We know what we're called to be and do. The sad truth is most of us just aren't living that way, and we're still expecting to get a call from King Jesus saying, I've got a special assignment for you, I need you over here, when in all reality we're not even we're not even able to fulfill the most general call that he's given all of us yet. And so if I were talking to whoever is listening right now, I know that if you're listening to this, you have a passion in your heart to do what God's called you to do. And we want to help you do that. Absolutely.
Mm.
We do want to help you see how your life fits into God's vision for the nations. Absolutely. But what I would encourage you to do, man, is just get started somewhere locally. Like get involved with sharing your faith, talk about Jesus, have spiritual conversations, get some training. If you need help, we will be glad to help you. But just get going and get moving and then allow Jesus to guide you as you go. I mean, that's literally the Great Commission. There's a lot of people who don't know that, but when it says go make disciples of all nations, the go is actually a continual verb. It means as you are going. That's what it means. As you are going throughout life, make disciples. Make
Mhm.
disciples is the actual only command in that whole passage. We always say go. He says go, absolutely, but he's already assuming we're going to be going. Like he's already assuming we're going to be fulfilling that common call that he's given us. And so I just want to encourage everybody listening, man. Let's get moving. Let's get going. Let's become the sent ones that he's called us to be. And let's pick up that common calling. And as we fulfill that common calling, he will narrow our focus so that we know our special part to play in that big vision that he has. But we've got to get going in order to really have clarity around that. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Sent Ones podcast. For practical next steps or more content like this, check us out at sentones.com, or you can subscribe with your favorite podcast provider. Hope to see you guys next time.